So I'm here with David Siegel of Meetup.com. David and I actually met for the first time just about a week ago, and I called him back and said, David, you're an especially relevant person right now. Your perspective could be really helpful for other CEOs to hear. So David is not just the head of Meetup, but also had a successful experience building and exiting Investopedia. He's an adjunct professor at Columbia, the School of International Affairs, with a waiting list of 150 or so students. So this is the man. David, tell us, if you would, a bit about what Meetup exists for, to start out, if you could.
Yeah, of course. So, there's a real epidemic out there, and it's not the coronavirus. It is loneliness, and loneliness is an increasing epidemic in the world. When recently people were asked whether or not they regularly feel lonely, 46% of people had said that they feel lonely on a regular basis, which is absolutely scary and terrifying. When they were asked, do you have a trusted confidant? There's a study by Siegel on this one. Only 25% of people said that 25% of people said that they do not have a trusted confidant, which means a quarter of people don't have even one person that they could go to talk to about something that's personal to them. Meetup comes in, and Meetup is all about building connections and building relationships with people. It's understanding that technology, this evil thing right here, which is good but evil, is also a double-edged sword, and it can be used for good and it can be used for challenges. And Meetup uses technology to get people off of technology. And what Meetup does, and we have 330,000 groups in 190 different countries around the world. What we do is we get people to connect in person despite the current situations right now.
So how are you guys adapting to the current situation right now?
Yeah. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the reason to meet up is not to do something in person. The reason to meet up is because community is what's most important. So if you say the goal is not getting together in person, but the goal is building community, then it changes what you could actually do as a business. So what does that mean? What it means is, in times of crisis like we have right now, community is actually much more important than less important. And it's actually much harder to be able to have community in this time when places of worship are shut down, when schools are shut down, when people potentially can't leave their houses, becomes even more important. So then what do you do? So we sent a message out to our 330,000 organizers around the world. And we basically said just that your team, your members, the people who are part of your group, if you run a support group of parents of children with ADHD, they need you now more than ever. If you're part of a language group and people are learning language and practicing Chinese together and can't do that, and there are bonds that have occurred from that, they need you more than ever. So we put together a list of practical tips on actions you can take to have productive virtual meetups. We also changed our policy for at least this temporary time, where we used to say our soul is about in person, and there's a big difference between in person and through Slack, or through Zoom or through Google Hangouts. And we said, no, community is what's most important. And if you go to our blog, which is called Community Matters, you could type in Community Matters Meetup. You could see some of the articles we've been writing about this. The goal is to have as many different meetups as possible, which is not going to be possible for a hiking meetup, but the people, and you can't hike together per se, but what you can still do is you can still have a beer together and virtually and talk to each other and build that relationship. So our focus right now is how can we provide tools, advice, best practices to be able to keep community going through this kind of challenging time.
By the way, you subconsciously primed me, because as you said, drink a beer together, I reached for my root beer. It's Puyere root beer. So it's a tea that tastes like dirt, supposedly packaged in root beer. You didn't mention your mission when we got together last week, even though we kind of got into business a bit. And it's fascinating because if I had known that at the core of your mission was helping people tap into community and experience that, our conversation would have gone in a somewhat different direction. That's something I've been confessing to people for the last 10 years, is something I've been wrestling with. And I hear it as I share that with other CEOs. They say it's lonely at the top. So we who have a business and then on top of that a family struggle with finding the time and forming connections. A lot of us do. And one of our founding members had a wonderful exit, a couple $100 million from a healthcare company. And he said to me, you know, I think I want to dedicate the next many years to figuring out how to deal with this community crisis. And I said, what crisis? And he went on to share statistics around how lonely people are. So fascinating that you're in the belly of the beast there.
Yeah, and by the way, just parenthetically, the loneliness epidemic is even more terrifying when it comes to people who are younger. So according to a study by the Ford Foundation, they looked at loneliness by different age cohorts. And among Gen Z, it's actually 62%. Among millennials, it's about 50%. And it gets better and better as people get older. But what's terrifying is the people who could possibly damage themselves or do whatever kind of activities. It's much more acute situations of people in their teens and 20s.
So I'm not sure if you have any advice for this demographic, for our community of CEOs in particular, but you're one. Maybe you can relate. You hang out with wacky people like me suddenly, so maybe you've observed some of these dysfunctions or behavior patterns. But how can we CEOs adapt to this lonelier planet? What can we do to build and cultivate that community outside of just the four walls of our office and our families?
Yeah, I think to me, the first thing that I find CEOs to not be good at oftentimes is to take care of themselves and to understand that oftentimes it's not selfish to put the oxygen mask on and to make sure that you're doing the things that you need in order to give to others. If you're a CEO and you have family and you have friends and everything is about doing things for one's spouse, one's children, maybe one's parents, one's friends, and work, the person that gets lost the most is oneself. So the key question is, how are you taking care of yourself? And if you're not taking care of yourself, there's going to be massive burnout. And I think community is the most important way with other CEOs that a CEO can take care of him or herself or themselves. So what do I mean by that?
Do you have a KPI or measurable? Is there a bottom line to community?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is
I say kind of tongue in cheek, but you're right. I mean, we manage what we measure, and CEOs are often so focused on hitting numbers. This is something that doesn't seem to lend itself so readily to quantification.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to me, the best way for a CEO to, I don't have a quantification, so I'm sorry on that one.
Yeah, don't be sorry, but that's, this is
what I can say. What I can say is that the experiences as a CEO that have been most beneficial for me in building relationships is when I'm willing to be as vulnerable as possible in a conversation. When and I find that I'm actually much more willing to be more vulnerable in the conversation. This is me. This is not necessarily everyone else, but in one-on-one type dialogues. It's been a fascinating experience that if I'm going through something at work and X person or X people are quitting around me, or my board is stressing me out and I don't know what to do with it, and I'm just really honest and say, like, I think I screwed up, and this is the mistakes that I think I made, and I'm really looking for help to figure out what to do. Barriers go down, and your ability to really get to know someone on a personal and professional perspective, even if you just met, is just enormous. So I feel like the best thing that a CEO can do is get out of the shell that you oftentimes need to put yourself in which is to have an exterior of confidence, an exterior of optimism, an exterior that you have it all kind of figured out to some extent, and to do the opposite of that, frankly. And that's the best way to really build a community that can help to effectively support you.
Mm. So I also have no bottom line number here, but I can tell you, seeing over the years where CEOs kind of fall off the rails, it's very closely linked often to that. It's that they were somehow insulated from their world, their bubble. It sounds so pejorative to say bubble, but I mean, we're the ones who put ourselves in it, and then we get tunnel vision. And getting outside those four walls, but not just getting outside in a vulnerable way where you can really open up and share, sounds like precious advice. So for those of you listening, take it from him, take it from me, who affirms this. It's, the smart man learns from his mistakes, the wise man from others. And that road's been well trodden. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're giving some really powerful advice here. So I feel like I'm missing my mark if I don't ask you for more. What other advice do you have for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, I have a certain management philosophy that I'm obsessed with, which is around transparent leadership. I find that leaders oftentimes are reluctant to share information, and they surround themselves with lawyers and HR people, professionals who inform them that it's too dangerous to share information and to keep things to themselves. And they're oftentimes reluctant to also share bad news because there's a belief that if they share bad news, then it would demotivate people. In reality, what I've actually found is that people oftentimes done the right way can be more motivated by frankly, by bad news and by sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because ultimately, transparency is the most important ingredient to building trust with employees. And if you don't have employee trust as a leader, you really have nothing. Just to name drop for a second here. So I used to be the CEO of Investopedia, which is owned by IAC, and Jack Welch was on the board of IAC. And I had the amazing opportunity to have a dinner with Jack Welch, just a couple of people. And I said to him, my understanding is he didn't just win, and as you know, he passed away in the last couple of weeks, so I'll give him a positive shout out, his personal influence on me. So he wasn't just named like the manager of the year or the decade, but Time Magazine named him the manager of the entire century, of the 20th century. So I said to him, okay, you're the manager of the century. What's the most important thing that you could tell me to be a more effective leader? So, in his inimitable kind of cigar-filled type way, and I'm not going to try to imitate him, he said, all that matters is that your employees trust you. And the moment that your employees don't trust you, you can't accomplish anything. Because ultimately, every decision that you make can be misinterpreted or interpreted in very different ways. And there's the spectrums of gray in every decision. And if they trust you, they're going to see it as positive. If they don't trust you, they're going to see it as negative. It's all about building employee trust. And what I was saying earlier is that be transparent, share everything, share as many different things as you possibly can. Make sure all financial information is always shared. Make sure the context and the why is always shared. Make sure the problems in the company are always shared. More problems in the company, there's more solutions and people that could focus on it. As a company, we have something called 3x3 that every single leader in the company has to send out. It's 3 good things that happen in the week, but also 3 bad things that happen in the week. So people could see those bad things, those challenges, and that we have hundreds of eyes on those challenges to make them better. So that's my management advice. Transparency builds trust, and trust is the foundation for everything.
There may be some very interesting challenges on the road ahead to be determined, but could there be opportunities? And if so, do you have any sense for what kinds of opportunities lie ahead as we're day by day seeing this temporary but new reality unfold with Corona? One CEO earlier mentioned, hey, everybody's complained that we never have time for anything. Suddenly we have a lot of time to work on our product. Any opportunities you foresee?
Yeah, I think that whenever you're a leader and you're able to take a step back, and you're forced to take a step back, and you're forced to think about, like, rather than what my board wants or what I even had promised in the past, what's really in the best interest of the company? This is an incredible opportunity. So there are certain things that as a company, we've been doing, and now we're able to sit back and say, like, wait, is this the right approach? Or we've been doing it because we said we would do it, and we look bad if we change our mind. So how can this event be used as an opportunity to actually retrench, get your management team together, which is what we're planning on doing, and say, how can we use this as a significant positive for making smarter decisions than just the path that we happen to have gone down beforehand? That's a broad general statement that I think applies to all CEOs. For us at Meetup, here's what I see. What I see is that people are going to be itching to get back out. And whether it's in a month, in 2 months, 3 months, or in 6 months, I am so excited about kind of going out to the world, going out to all of our organizers, going out to our 49 million members, and saying to all those people, giving them a challenge and saying, hey, in Miami, we typically have 5,000 events. Organizers, we're giving you a challenge. Let's figure out how to have double, triple the number of events. Let's create an environment where Meetup is the place to go when people want to go out and do things. And I think that what's happening is people are realizing more and more how important it is to get on, how important it is to do things. And we could seize on that opportunity to get Meetup to really catapult us into a much more influential business and have hundreds of millions of members, not just the close to 50 million members that we have today. So it's not being concerned, it's being appropriately concerned about the current, but it's more looking at how every single thing that people are going through can be an incredible opportunity for your clients, for your management team, and for your business. And that takes a certain level of positivity and optimism. I think there are certain people, for example, on my leadership team that are more negative, shall we say, in nature. If you're negative and you're skeptical, it's hard for your mind to come up with kind of big game-changing opportunities and ideas. So challenge yourself as a CEO, challenge yourself as any C-level executive to say, how can I turn this into a huge positive for our business? If you're not challenging yourself, you're not doing your job.
Maybe I took your challenge a little too seriously, but I was on it as you were talking about it. And I want to start a meetup. I want to have a waiting list. So as soon as people come outside again, they're just rearing to go. And actually, I was thinking about what CEO doesn't have some incredibly enthusiastic interest or passion. And I wonder if my community is actually a set of community organizers. I want to be with people that share interest X of mine. I want to be with people who are my clients or prospective clients, just to hear, not to enroll more clients, but to hear what's on their minds and see what they do when they're completely outside of the context of health. And so I could see any entrepreneur as being a spearhead for this. I'm sure you're on top of marketing plenty, but it does seem like there's some incredible opportunity to get people, especially who are going to have so much pent-up energy, on some waiting lists for meetups.
Yeah, our biggest growth area of organizers is actually entrepreneurs. So I was a keynote speaker at Startup Grind on the West Coast about a month ago, and I asked people, and it was all entrepreneurs. I asked people, how many of you are an organizer meetup? And like a third of the people I was shocked how many people have raised their hands. And there's many meetups that are specifically for entrepreneurs to find other entrepreneurs, to find partners, to find employees, to exchange ideas. I challenge you to start a meetup group. Done. Josh, let's see if you hit the challenge.
I love it. I mean, I'm imagining the old school searches where you'd search for a car and you'd get a whole long list of results. And then it got more curated over time, and you could choose cars that were of a certain value. And so the curation is the challenge that in bringing CEOs together we've seen. But I'm in for it. Say a few words, if you would, and I want to let us get back to all the demands tugging at I'm sure your attention and some of the stuff going on here. But can you share a little bit about the dynamics with your team? Because on the one hand, you're an astute and sensitive, thoughtful observer about everything you're seeing with your organizers, the world at large, macro patterns. You're a bit of an anthropologist seeing trends like loneliness. If we peer into your company, are there any changes or challenges, any dynamics you're seeing unfold as companies are shifting from in-person to more remote or otherwise that you think we can perhaps take notes from?
I mean, there's lots of interesting challenges. So we're currently owned by WeWork. WeWork has been in the process of selling us for now many months, which is all public information. What's been really interesting is that the dynamic in our management team and also our employees is that we have people who are in love with and obsessed with our mission. Our mission around our specifically stated to empower personal growth through real human connections resonates for many, many of our employees. And we're right now in the interesting dynamic of how does that best get optimized from a business revenue and profit perspective. And what we're seeing as a company is that there are certain people that really understand that revenue and profit give oxygen to our mission, and that the best way to accomplish our mission is to be a successful business. And there are others that are really in it for the mission and are not interested in some of the business and financial dynamics that are critical in an organization. So I have, as a leader, been really clear that we can't thrive and exist unless we're a healthy business. And we need to focus on how to make sure that our business health is our top priority. And if we do that, we could do a better job of realizing our mission. But it's definitely a dynamic that exists at Meetup and exists within our leadership team. That's an ongoing struggle and meaningful cultural influencer.
Mm-hmm. That is probably a dynamic that plays out at a lot of companies. And exactly. I hate to call one group the impassioned ideologues because there's no less passion and connectedness with the ideology, the pursuit among those who are realistic and ensuring there's capital and the wherewithal to expand the boundaries of possibility. But you're clearly grappling with issues that are front and center for a lot of CEOs. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective broadly, but also in some very focused areas that, again, I think are really alive right now for people. I love any opportunity to connect with you. Any excuse, it's a great excuse in my book, but this is especially valuable. I'm so grateful for your time. And anyway, I or the extended community can be a resource. Never hesitate to ask. For now, my friend, have an amazing week, month ahead, to the extent possible, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you, Josh. Love spending time together as always. Have a good one, everyone. Be well. Bye-bye.